Welcome everyone. My name is Cerridwen of the Yupik people, and I would just like to take a moment to honor my mother, Karen Brooks of Manly Hot Springs, and our ancestors from Tununic, the Kamchatka Peninsula, and Finland. I would also like to honor my father, Floyd Brooks of Nenana, and our ancestors from Oregon and Kerry County, Ireland. It is a privilege to be broadcasting from the land of the Connect tribe of the Dena'ina Atna peoples. And so I'd like us all to just take a moment to reflect on the lands we all reside in and the resilient peoples that came before us. Koyana. So I'm so excited to share 2 recipes with you today. We're going to be making a salad, a wild green salad, and also a saute, stir fry of sorts. Everything was found, if not in my backyard, very close to. And I live, like I said, on the Picnic lands. So some of the plants are not available north of the Alaska Range, or they're so small that they're not often harvested. So I'm going to make substitutions for those of you in the interior. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm happy to answer any of the questions you have. So we're going to start with the salad, and I'm kind of calling it the found and foraged wild green salad. It's over here on the cutting board, so I'm going to move over to my cutting station. Can you see me? Perfect. So first I'm just going to introduce all of these plant allies that we're going to be using today. I picked this morning because when I picked it yesterday, it wilted rather fast. These are dandelion greens, some young dandelion greens. And I just wanted this to look as fresh and delicious as possible. So I went back out this morning, got some fresh ones. This is fireweed greens. I plucked all of the leaves off of the stem so that we get all of the juicy, delicious bits of the fireweed and none of the woody stem parts of the fireweed. Whereas normally, I have a little demo. This is what the full baby fireweeds are looking like right now. So I just went ahead and stripped them to keep the leaves for the salad. Next up, we're gonna have some chickweed, one of my favorites. It is so nutritious in a lot of different ways. It's one of my favorite allies. It's a very feminine plant. Not to say that men don't love it too, but it works really well with feminine issues and feminine support. So that is lady chickweed. And then this wild spring onions don't grow super close to me. So this is just some chives that have been growing in my garden. Went out and picked that this morning as well. So all of that combined, and we will make a delicious salad. So to start, I like to grab a huge chunk of the chickweed. Chickweed's so soft, you don't always have to cut it. What I like to do is just make a simple, easy pile so that when I cut it, it just makes it so much easier. The wonderful part about chickweed is that people tend not to want it in their yard or in their garden, so you can just volunteer to go pick it. And especially when it's grown in the garden, it is nice and clean. There's not going to be a lot of random plants mixed in. It usually grows all by itself. So personally, I like my, even when I'm using regular lettuce, I like to cut it pretty small because then it feels like the dressing coats all the parts of the plant and just makes it more delicious. So these are nice and small. I would say in my recipe I wrote 2 cups, but it's going to be closer to 4 if I were to actually measure that out. And I love chickweed so much, I'm just gonna add a little bit more. It is the closest to spinach, palate-wise, although not as bitter. So of all of these plants, it's going to be the least bitter. And I like to make it the bulk of my salad for that reason. So that, especially people who are new to foraged salads, foraged greens, they won't pick up on too much of that bitterness. Next up are these beautiful dandelion greens. The young greens are the tastiest for eating raw. Every single part of the dandelion plant can be used, root, leaves, flowers, and as it starts to flower, the leaves can turn a bit bitter. So that's when we cook them or prepare them in other ways, making teas, things like that. The root you can harvest early in the spring or late in the fall when the energy is down in the roots. And I'm sure we'll talk more about dandelion later. But right now, these are all the greens I got. And as you can see, it's not nearly as much as the chickweed there because dandelion is a bitter. It increases bioproduction, like most bitters, to help with digestion. So this, by having this in your salad and in just the right amount, you won't necessarily notice the bitter flavor. You might get hints of it here and there, but it's more that it'll help you digest the rest of your food to come. Salad tends to be the first course or eaten before a bigger meal. And so making sure you have some kind of bitter in your salad does wonders for the digestion. So we've got them nice and evenly cut. This is small. I'm going to add that into the bowl. Next up, we've got these fireweed greens. And these, I would say, are the next sweetest, especially when they're this young. As you can see, some of these leaves are just so tiny because they haven't even started forming their flower heads yet. So all of the aerial parts of the fireweed is used. Aerial meaning above ground. There are some medicines made from the root, but as far as foodstuffs go, I'd say stick with the above ground parts. And once the fireweed blooms, you could top this salad with some beautiful purple or white fireweed flowers and just make it really pretty. Well, that's a favorite thing to do of mine as well. So cut these up. They're so thin, I won't have to cut them much. And again, nice and small so that the dressing we make can fully coat all of the leaves. And to top it off for a little extra flavor, we've got the spring onion or chives here. You can use green onion if you grow it. You can use even regular onion in smaller amounts because it can be a little spicy, or if you happen to come across sweet onions or are growing sweet onions, this works really well. The onions I like to cut even smaller so that you never get like one big hit of onion flavor. It can definitely make the eyes water when you take a big old bite of just onion. So cut these nice and small. And so I'm just gonna stir up these greens, mix it all in. I like really mixing my cut greens so that I get all of the tastes of each bite. And now, with fresh wild greens, they can turn rather quickly. Like I was saying, I had to go pick more dandelion because it wilted overnight. And so if you can, make the size salad that you know you're gonna eat that day. Just makes it easy, and then you can just go out the next day and pick. And when you do it that way, it takes less time picking, less time processing, and you're not wasting any of the plants. That's something I am a firm believer in, is if you're going to put the work in and harvest the plant, don't let any of it go to waste. It's disrespectful to the plants, and it just makes me sad. So if you can use all of the greens that you harvest, and if you're not able to use all of the greens, you can actually coat, or if you made the salad, maybe made a little bit too much, you might be able to stretch it, allow it to last longer by coating it with the dressing, because the dressing is going to have a little bit of oil in it, and the oil will actually create a seal over the cut parts of the plants and help it last longer, especially if you have a fridge to put it in. So the salad is basically ready, and now I'm going to make a simple salad dressing. So I've got my handy mason jar, and for the base, it's going to be a vinegar and oil. So we've got some nasturtium apple cider vinegar. That's from 2 years ago now. It's delicious. I made a bunch of this, and that's why we're still working through it, but it is still delicious. Nasturtium, although it's not growing wild unless it has overgrown someone's garden, it is a common plant that's grown in flower boxes and gardens all across the state. It does really, really well here. And the flowers are very peppery. I would describe it as an arugula taste. And I love arugula, so this is just going to be a little peppery, little kick to it to help balance out the oil. So I'm just going to make enough for this salad. We're going to do 3 of these tablespoons nasturtium. I love the color. It really is so beautiful. Three of those. We've got nettle infused extra virgin olive oil from last year. And you can see it's almost a creamy color. And that's because I used fresh nettle to infuse into the oil. And then I actually used an immersion blender to break up that plant material and get it to integrate even stronger into the oil itself. This batch was olive oil, but this year when I went to make my nettle infused olive oil, I realized I didn't have enough olive oil. So I ended up using half olive oil and half avocado oil. Delicious. So, you know, you don't have to be super strict about the oils you use. You can use the oil that works best for you. You can even use rendered fat if you are hunting and gathering and have excess fat and, you know, are able to make lard, things like that. You can infuse and infuse the nettle into any fat for this particular thing. So I did 2 tablespoons of that. And now, yes, I wanted to add this devil's club. I know we get it south of the Alaska range, but if you get a chance to travel south from Fairbanks, from the interior during this time of year, it's so worth it to be able to get some of this medicine. It's really, really strong medicine. So strong, some even use it to clear up parasites. It doesn't flush you out, it just supports the systems that allow you to maintain balance in your body. The smell of Devil's Club is, it's like taking a beautiful walk in damp woods. That's what it reminds me of, especially like after a rainfall, that kind of walking on crunchy ground and nothing else is really budding yet. Like the trees are just starting to turn green And then you find the devil's club, which of course has such a strong name and is aptly named because you can get stung by the prickly barbs, and they're really hard to get out. But wear leather gloves are the best. And then we pick them, I blanch them, quick hot water blanch for about 3 minutes in boiling water, and then immediately in an ice bath to cool it down so it doesn't cook anymore. Then I cut up some garlic, you can put onion, you can put nothing, up to you. And then I covered with apple cider vinegar. So for this one, I am going to fish a couple of these out. I'm actually just going to put it on the cutting board so I can chop it up and add it directly to the salad. Maybe like a tablespoon, if you love it, maybe more. Just depends on how I'm feeling. And then I'm actually just going to pour a little bit of that infused apple cider vinegar in there as well. Next in the dressing, we want a little sweet to balance out the sour. So you can use honey here. Honey is great. A lot of people keep throwing bees. You could use, sometimes you can make a flour, like if you've got the fireweed flowers, you've got an abundance, you can muddle those in there and it adds a little bit of sweetness. Almost any flour, dandelion flour, you can just muddle it into the dressing and add that sweetness if you are trying to be more sugar-free. But for today, I'm going to use this herbal syrup I made this last winter with raspberry leaf, rosehip, and nettle. And I just want to use about a teaspoon, maybe less. We don't need much. It's just to balance the palate and have all the tastes. So when we allow our taste buds to experience all of the tastes, our body tends to create more of the enzymes that it needs to digest everything you're eating. So really, by having things touch your tongue, it sends a signal to your brain and body to produce the enzymes it needs. So give that a stir. It's looking pretty good. This is some kelp powder. I don't really like adding salt to things. So instead of adding salt, you can add seaweed. Seaweed is high in iodine. It's also got that salty flavor being from the ocean. And so instead of salt, but of course, if you love salt, or if maybe your doctor prescribed you having more salt, then you can go ahead and use salt, of course. You could even do half and half. I'm gonna grab another spoon. Definitely don't want to put a wet spoon in this dried kelp powder. And sprinkle that in. I'm just going to do a half teaspoon. And also when seaweed mixes with water, when it's been dried, it will thicken a little. That's kind of nice too. You can, if you put too much vinegar in, any of those things, you can just add a little bit extra kelp powder or bacamere, any of the seaweeds, bladderwrack, that's a great one that grows on the coast. I know there's a big resurgence of kelp farming in Tate, Alaska. And so all of these products can be found locally as well. And of course, pepper. I just love pepper. So I'm just gonna do a couple shakes of the pepper. I'll set this to the side. I've got my devil's club buds and a couple of those garlic cloves. I'm going to mince them up really, really, really small. That to the salad. Then, since I'm going to eat this tonight, and I want to make sure none of my greens wilt, I'm going to add a lid, give it a good shake. Mix everything in there. I should probably taste test it, make sure it doesn't need anything. It's perfect. So, salad dressings, as long as you know kind of the basis of it, you can put whatever spices you love. It's really choose your own adventure salad dressing. So I'm just gonna drizzle that over our spring greens. And I used it all, perfect. Mix it all together. Make sure all of those greens are covered. And it's already making me hungry. So I might have to have some for lunch as well. And there you go. I like to just start a little extra, especially when I mince in that the pickled devil's club blood, just to make sure that it's evenly distributed throughout. And there is our salad, our spring green extravaganza. I have fed this to people who are not used to foraging, who are not used to eating wild, picked and processed foods, and they love it. So even if people are hesitant, maybe just give them a little bit. It pairs really good with salad, it pairs really good with salmon. And sometimes even if I poach the salmon, I'll even put the greens right on top of the salmon, and some of that vinaigrette sinks down into the salmon, adds some more complex flavors. It's awesome with mousse. Really, it's a great side for anything, or all by itself. And if you wanted to add some protein, you could cut up cooked salmon from the night before and sprinkle it on top, or you could cut up some cooked mousse that you had from the night before, 2 nights ago, to utilize your leftovers to create a whole meal with the carbs and the sugars and the greens, and then adding some protein in there so you feel more satiated, that this is going to be your only meal. And for those vegan vegetarians out there, there's beans, there's tofu. We could go all into all the alternatives, but even just by itself, it's a good one. So there you go. I'll show you here. There is our spring green salad. If I wanted to get fancy, we could put flowers on top, dandelion flowers. Fireweed flowers aren't out yet, but the dandelions definitely are. So whichever time of year you find yourself in, soon it'll be roses, so you can sprinkle rose petals on top. People love that, so try that out, and I hope it goes well for you. Is there any questions on the salad? Any time right now in spring, in this kind of early spring, as it's trying to figure out summer, the greens are all going to be sweet and delicious and wonderful, and they're going to be small. I mean, this one is one of the bigger ones I got, and it was maybe 10 inches tall, coming from the ground. And as you pull back the top layer, you can see it hasn't even begun to start that flower head. That being said, as the summer progresses, you can continue to eat fireweed greens all through until the fall. With the flowers on it, they deepen in flavor. I don't want to say bitter, but it's a stronger fireweed flavor. And the leaves are of course going to be bigger, so you need less plants to harvest to make a salad. And I spent some time living in Denali National Park for a while, and that's how I got my greens. Is I just ate primarily fireweed greens all summer and the flowers. So you would just pull, as they get more mature, it's more important to do that, pull off the leaves from the stalk. The stalk can get kind of woody. The older it gets, the woodier it gets. Since I had taken the leaves off all these, I'm actually, since these are still young and good, I'm going to save the stalks because really easy to break, they're crisp. And that is going to go into some ferments I'm going to make from some of the leftover plants I have from this. So, and then to show you a size difference, these are fireweed shoots. So you can see that kind of maroon tinge to it that tells the story of its future self, which is going to be beautiful and purple, seas of purple all through the state. And this, I mean, they're growing maybe 2 to 5 inches tall. They don't have many leaves. The leaves they do have are really tight in to the stalk, and they're more like asparagus. And so I'm actually going to cook everything together here for the saute. So this is what the baby asparagus, the baby fireweed look like. It can taste like asparagus, but they don't leave that, the unpleasant odor afterwards like asparagus does. So yeah, babies best for using the stalk as well, and then the adult plant is better for the salad. I'm going to take out my little demo here. So imagine this one's very, very tall, and this is a mature fireweed. What I like to do is reach from the top and pick the top third of the plant, and then the bottom 2/3 still have lots of leaves on it. And when you do that, especially if you do it in your yard, a fascinating thing happens. Then you get multiple heads of flowers. So you'll get, this and that leaf and that leaf will all start to form their own flower heads. So you get this kind of beautiful, like a hydra looking fireweed with multiple. It's not going to have the big presenting cone of flowers like if you hadn't touched the fireweed, but it will still produce flowers. It still propagates, and you can actually keep going back to that plant, and you could even just pick off just the leaves if you wanted to spend some time in the field, and then just make sure some leaves are left on the stalk so that it can create photosynthesis with the sun and will continue to grow. So yes, all of the fireweed I picked, I didn't pull it out of the earth. I snipped it with my fingernail. And some people use scissors. I just use like my thumb, and I kind of just use the edge of my forefinger, and I'm able to break it without ripping the root out. And then that, especially this early in the season, and even with these little baby greens, all of these roots that I left out in nature will grow a fireweed plant this season. So we didn't affect the crop of these that are going to be in the areas I picked from. So that's another thing to love about all of these plants that are classified as weeds are really some of our best allies, because we call them weeds thinking they're invasive, when some can be, but a lot of our Alaskan weeds are native plants and they grow really fast, right? So they can sustain us because they're growing at such a wonderful rate, and that we can keep harvesting it. So there. We've got some more. I can go visit that same patch later this summer and probably get some flowers from it for some jelly or whatever I want to do with it. Most public spaces, like state parks, are a little bit different than national parks, right? National parks, they're more protected, and it's not as recommended to harvest the plants in a national park. In a state park, go for it. And I like state parks because they don't have many roads to and from, so you're not getting a lot of that dusty road traffic. And often they are full of trails that are groomed. So you can walk from your car, you can walk from your car on a groomed trail and walk out far enough, maybe even farther than other people might go on that same trail. Bring your baskets, bring some reusable bags, gloves, scissors you might need, or a knife, and then just walk out. Like literally, you're on the trail. Just take a hard right and just start walking out into the wilderness. Always being careful that, especially if you're in for fireweed greens, you're not really going to grow where the tundra are. It's just not its environment. It's a little too dry. But if you are harvesting the blueberries, the things that do grow in the tundra, just make sure you follow other people's footprints. You can see them usually if they go off trail, and then trying not to make your own trail too much, because that tundra, the lichen, the moss, it dies really easily with pressure. That's why these bear trails are made so quickly. It's really just from bears walking to and from their berry patches, and then it makes a trail very quickly, maybe 1 or 2 passes, and there's dead growth there. So outside of Fairbanks, going out on the Chena Hot Springs Road, where there's more, less houses, more open land, that's a great spot. I've definitely gotten a lot of good plants out there. There's campgrounds. Like if you find yourself camping at a campground, I love harvesting my salads for camping. So having some of the supplies that you pack for your camping trip be your harvesting supplies, and then you can just kind of spread out from wherever you've camped. It could be a designated campground. It could be backcountry backpacking, camping, and then picking around there. Also, like learning environments. Where do these plants grow? Fireweed really like open spaces. It's called fireweed because after big burns, the fireweed is one of the first things to come in, and it actually it changes the soil to allow other plants to come after it. So it's kind of an earth ally in that way. We're actually nurturing the soil with the fireweed so that more plants will return after the burns. So fireweed for sure is going to be in burnt areas, along riverbeds, next to the coast. There's also another variety, dwarf fireweed is even more common. Some people call it river beauty. It grows along riverbanks. It's a lot shorter. Some only get as tall as 5 inches. Their flowers are like 3 times the size of our regular fireweed flowers, and their leaves are big and fat. They're almost fatter than they are long. So, but it's undeniably fireweed. It's just a slightly different variety. And all those you can eat the same way. And I found those, driving from Alaska to Canada and through the Yukon, river beauty and fireweed growing side by side along riverbanks. But yeah, just getting curious about your environment, going on the walks or on the adventures that you're already going on, and then just looking around, like really notice what's around you. If you take a break and you sit down on a rock, just look, what's growing next to me? Do I know that plant? And really that was the advice that I learned when I was little and starting to learn plants. It was just you pick one plant and you learn that plant. And then everywhere you go, you try to find the plant. And then you remember, okay, where did I find the plant? And then where was it not? And it kind of creates a database in your head of the places you can go for that. So, and then, nettle, we'll be cooking with nettle today. It also likes the same environment. In South Central, at least, nettle doesn't grow as well up north, but it will have the same environment as the fireweed. So most of what I harvested of both those plants came from the same forest, and it was a mixed forest of cottonwood, alder, and birch. Whereas the Devil's Club is found in drier places along the coastline or along waterways that connect to the ocean. It's got sandier soil usually, and it tends to grow in cottonwood forests. So, you know, just finding the environment that you wanna pick in. Really just getting out there and exploring. I think and it's fun, you know. The more you look at plants and the more you say, like, this is fireweed, you're creating this connection with that color. And eventually you'll be able to look out, you know, in those clear areas where there might not be a lot of trees and there's a lot of underbrush. There's all these different color greens, so many, right? And I was reading something about a study about women being able to tell greens better than men because we were the foragers. So I can say it's true for my own life, where I can look out into a mass of green where it's just green for most people and say, oh no, this is a silvery green, that's raspberry leaf. This is a deeper purple green, that's nettle. This is a light green with some, you know, red, that's fireweed. So really just getting used to it and then practicing. A lot of people, like, the hard and fast rule for freezing is blanching. I don't always blanch all my greens, especially if I know I'm going to use them, you know, fairly frequently. So for the nettle, I wouldn't blanch nettle. I'll just freeze it, and then you can even crunch it up. It's almost like freeze-dried powder. If you freeze it in a bag with air in it, let it freeze, open up the bag, and then you can squish up all the frozen, and it makes almost like a powder. And then you can sprinkle that on omelets. You can, you know, as long as you do cook it. Nettle has, which we're going to cook with today, it has formic acid in it. So it's also known as stinging nettle. It's got these little hairs that can irritate the skin. It creates a histamine response in our body. What's super cool about that is it actually works as an antihistamine when we eat it. So if we were to use this medicinally, you could, you know, make an eye wash. And if someone had hay fever, you could wash the eyes with this nettle water infusion, and it would help add the antihistamine. I don't know how it compares to Benadryl, but I would prefer it over a Benadryl, especially being out in the woods. If you don't have access to things, to stores, it's great to be able to make your own medicine or support a loved one if they're going through allergies. You could make a poultice, spit poultice, you chew it up in your mouth, slap it on the bug bite, bee sting, and it'll help put those antihistamines in it. Drying it also does that. The needles fall off, and some people, you know, will dry the whole plant. My mom will dry just the whole plant, stem and all. And then she makes things like tinctures can be easier to make with dried nettle because then there isn't any moisture that you have to escape, right? She also makes this amazing hair rinse that it's just apple cider vinegar over dried or fresh nettle, but dried, again, you can cap it and forget it and let it sit. And then, you know, it's a little bit less work. Otherwise, if you're using the fresh, you kind of have to keep the cloth on it, keep pushing down the fresh herb, and then topping off whatever evaporates. But yeah, I love dried dried nettle. And you could even make that into a greens powder, just like how I had that ground kelp. Yeah, I just grind it up in a blender, sprinkle it on stuff. You can put it in a shaker bottle. It's great. I'm gonna go ahead and preheat my skillet so that it's the right temperature for when we start the saute, because I have this cast iron, and the thing with cast iron is you want a good even heat. Sometimes it heats up in patches. So I always just go way ahead of time, put it on low. You can kind of set it. Don't completely forget it. There is still fire, but then it's starting to warm up. And if you'd like, I could talk more about some of the medicinal properties of the plants. Fireweed, for instance, it's not known in the world as a plant that's high in antioxidants. It does have antioxidants in it because it is out, uncovered in open areas where the sun is directly shining down on it, meaning it has the chance to oxidize. So it has to create antioxidants so that it doesn't get burnt throughout the process of the day, and especially in Fairbanks, right? We've got that sun all the time, and even non-direct sun, as we know from our skin, it can still burn our skin, it can still burn the plants. So these plants are so intelligent, and then they create these antioxidants to counteract the sun's rays. Now, I worked on a project where we went out and did these assays, these scientific assay tests, and it was in conjunction with a couple different universities, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and the premise was that our Alaskan blueberries are amazing and they're really high in vitamin C, super high in antioxidants. And when they're compared with, say, Oregon blueberries, the antioxidant profile is almost 300% higher in Alaskan blueberries because they're constantly under the sun. So with that in mind, the study thought, oh, well, if this happens to a plant that's already got antioxidants, what if we tested plants that aren't known for their antioxidants, like fireweed, like lamb's quarter or nettle? And what we found, and as well as the other universities that were participating in this, was that every Alaskan native plant has higher amounts of antioxidants. So in Montana, they were barely registering antioxidants in their fireweed greens. But then you come into South Central Alaska, and then and definitely up into the interior of Alaska, and measuring the antioxidant levels in the leaves there, and it was like as high as an Oregon blueberry. So you definitely don't need to just have blueberries to get your antioxidants in. If you're eating wild from nature, from our backyards, then you're going to get these awesome nutrients that are available to just us from the place we live in. So I've turned up the heat. It's medium high, and I'm just going to keep stirring it to soften these onions. As you can see, I didn't dice the onion. That's kind of a go-to for a lot of people, but I really like leaving them in these long strands because it's almost like it just adds a little different texture. It incorporates differently into the stir fry where it almost like wraps around the grains, and especially since we're going to have these delicious prawns of the fireweed shoots as well as the fiddleheads. And then as these onions cook down a little bit, because the more you cook the onions, the reason they call it caramelizing it is it breaks down the cell walls and it allows more of the sugars to come out. And so it'll make even this spicy red onion a sweeten it up And then I'll tell you what I'm going to put as this cooks. I have this dandelion root marinade. So what I did was I cooked the dandelion root. You can't even really see it because the marinade's covering it, but you'll see it when I pull it out. And I had some miso paste, and I used some of that nettle apple cider vinegar I had left over from last year. I actually used the rest of it for this. And I had some other random herbs. You know, I just threw in whatever sounded good. I believe I put like a lemongrass paste. And although that doesn't grow here, you know, I'll make an exception for some lemongrass. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. Oh, and I also cut up a piece of ginger just for a little spice. So what I did was I fish some of these out of here. You can see here, that's about as small as the dandelion root is. How I prepared this marinade is I cut them and I boiled them for about 3 minutes. I saved the water and I drank it as a tea. It's great ice too. So you don't really have to get rid of anything, any of the cooking agents you're using. It can always be used for something else, even if you just want to throw it in your bath water. Sometimes I do that as well if I'm not in the mood for tea. So they're cut up really small. Here's a bunch because right now the dandelion roots aren't super big. They're not nearly as big as they're going to be. So I'm going to strain some of this out. To prepare it to add as one of the final steps. With the onion mixture. Now we can really force some cooking on some onions, and if you go too fast too soon, you run the risk of burning it. Some people like that, but burnt is just a slightly different taste than sweet caramelized. So I just like, you know, I'm still making it happen a little faster, but right on the edge, not allowing it to burn. And I'm going to turn it down a little now that the pan is all evenly hot. Spread it out, surface area. Now, strainer's dirty. So I'm going to do this the old way, the old school way. That is it. I have a different strainer, even better. So I'm going to strain this all out so you can see. And can you see right here in my strainer bowl? Okay, so these onions are starting to brown up really nicely. And now that they're starting to brown, I'm going to take my blanched fiddlehead ferns. They're going to take the longest to cook to make sure they cook thoroughly. And it's about 2-3 cups. I'm going to just go ahead and add 2 cups in. It's going to be pretty big as is. Then I'll have some left over for something else. Mix that around. Start cooking those fiddleheads. And this is just an overnight marinade. So I actually just made it yesterday. I'm just going to strain it completely out. And then you get a chance to see what they look like. I'm going to take out the bigger ginger pieces that I just put in to add flavor. Get out all the liquid. And you can see these are all just minced dandelion roots. It's really important to clean the dandelion roots really, really well. They're from the soil. They might have little pebbles or grit, dirt. Not that dirt would hurt you, it's just, it will wear down your teeth. And if you were to accidentally bite down on a small rock, that could be a horrible experience. So I want to save you from that experience by just making sure you really, really, really wash any roots that you're going to use to eat. And then also, if you've ever picked dandelion root, you might notice that there's like a papery black sheath around the outside. I like to remove all of that when I do these marinades. Well, looking pretty good. I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of the dandy root marinade. And you can see some of these lighter colors. That's just the miso, little bubbles of miso flavor. So add 2 of those for our flavor. And then if I wanted more sauce, I could add some sauce to top it with. Stir that up. And it's looking ready for the fireweed. Add that in. Whenever I add a new vegetable, I kind of like to work it so that I'm covering the new plant with whatever I cooked before. So that's closest to the pan, and then things cook more evenly. And we don't want to completely cook the fireweed shoots because I washed them multiple times, rinsed them, agitated the water, used a salad spinner to get any excess water out. And so I'm very confident that they are very clean. I rinsed them enough so that the last rinse, the water was completely clear. That's a really good thing to do. And I like the slightly, like I like my asparagus slightly crispy. I like my fireweed shoots slightly crispy. And especially since we're cooking these fiddleheads, you know, a good bit, they're going to be a lot softer. So we're playing with textures. We've got, you know, the softness of the fireweed or of the fiddlehead, kind of a gooiness in the onion as it gets this soft, and then the crisp freshness of the fireweed shoots. This is looking awesome. The last thing I add is the leaf, the nettle leaf, and you know, cook's choice. I'm going to add about 2 handfuls because that looks like what the pan can handle. And these don't really take too long to reduce down. Kind of like spinach. You would add spinach at the end of your meal or end of the cooking because really they wilt very fast and that's all you need. I have taken all of the leaves off of their stems, and also some people say that the only way to get the stinging nettle, the stinging part off the nettle is to cook them. You can submerge the plants in water for a half hour, and that actually pulls the formic acid that causes the reaction out of the plant and into the water, and then just rinse multiple times. That's what I did with these, so I could actually juice it. You can juice these greens just like any other greens, and it's better than wheatgrass juice. It's better than celery juice, honestly. And that's just going to cook a little bit longer. I'm going to reduce the heat drastically to low because you can already see the nettle is tiny. Now our saute is ready. Get all of the plants in there. Taking the marinade from our dandelion root, and then I'm just gonna drizzle it. Drizzle a little on top. And boom, there is our delicious fiddlehead fireweed shoot saute. ready to eat. So there you go. Oh, it smells so good. Mm.
This was an incredible class. I'm sure that everyone who sees the recording will be really grateful that we finished up because that saute looks amazing.
I hope everyone got at least one morsel of knowledge, if not more. That would be lovely. And I think the most important part of this series is learning how to cook with the plants that we harvest, because I do see a resurgence in harvesting our plant resources and getting out there. I see more people, you know, and as just a gentle reminder, don't pick too much in one area. The old way was like one pick for every 15 plants. Depends on the plant, depends on how much you have in front of you and how remote you are. So if you're really remote and you're in a field of millions of fireweed, you could just harvest one area and pick quite a lot and not have to worry about spacing it out every 15 plants. But say if you're in Fairbanks, in the city, on the trails, or in Anchorage, or on well-trod trails, that becomes more important. And sometimes that's why I don't stay on the trail when I harvest, because by getting off the trail, you can hide your spots, right? Like you don't want everyone to know where this is being picked. And if you pick it right off the trail, then future foragers will see it, will see the effects of the picked plants, and they'll say, oh, I'll pick some more. And then that's what leads to the overpicking and decimation of certain plant groups. So just keeping that in mind, sustainable harvest, and then there's going to be an abundance to go around for everybody.
And I've heard the rule, only pick what you can process today.
Yes.
Yeah, and you can always go back tomorrow, right? You can always go back the next day. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. So true.
So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Molly, for sharing your wonderful information and your recipes. We are so excited for this series and for the future classes we have coming. So stay tuned, everyone.